Ben Askren was answering fan questions on social media, and somebody asked him something along the lines of, if you could go back to your career and you could train differently, what is it you would have done different? And Ben said, jujitsu. He said, I was trained by Duke Rufus. If I could do it again, I would still be trained by Duke Rufus, but I spent some more time with Marcelo Garcia. I'd have gone out and trained with John Danaher and the Death Squad. And who are we to possibly judge somebody's assessment of themselves? At the same time, I feel compelled to judge it because I don't know if he's right. I mean, look at what he's saying. Ben is saying that he would have liked jujitsu, and even further the stop by saying he could have choked more people. Okay, great. But that wouldn't have changed his career, right? It might have made it easier. He might have, instead of having to go 15 minutes, only had to go 9 minutes a couple of times, or instead of having to go 25 minutes, only had to go 16 minutes a couple of times. It might have made his career easier, but I'm trying to look at what he's saying and find out what it would have changed in terms of outcome, wins and losses, championships that he had, reign and legacy. I'm trying to find 18-0 record, championships in 2 different organizations. I'm trying to find out where that ever became a problem. By example, I could steal Ben's thought. If you were to ask me, I started getting highly immersed in jujitsu post-career. And knowing what I know now about jujitsu, I would have been well served to have that earlier on, but I was also a guy who got submitted. I was also a guy who got put in some positions that I wasn't familiar with and had to tap out. That never happened to Ben. So if he didn't need jujitsu defensively and he's saying he would have liked it offensively, I feel as though what he's saying is his career would have been easier in terms of calories burned. And I'm not against that. That's very fair for him to say, but I am a little bit confused by it. I mean, look, Ben's only got 2 losses. And the first one, which was against Masvidal, was the easiest fight of his life. He never got his heart rate above resting. I mean, it's just a reality. It was a very easy fight. His fight against Mayo was a very complex, very fun, scrambling. That fight never got the full credit it deserved. I mean, I would encourage you to go back and watch that fight. That was a very, very fun fight. But he was outclassed in some of the jiu-jitsu areas. So I feel as though Ben, in retrospect, if he would have spent time with the Marcelo Garcias and the John Danahers of the world, and he would have learned some of the intricacies and some of the positions, in a best case scenario, instead of having an amazing record that only has 2 losses on it, he has an amazing record that maybe only has 1 loss on it. I mean, I don't fully get it. I was a little bit lost, and I'm not necessarily somebody that would get it. I will tell you this. I spend a lot of time in life in general looking back at what I coulda, woulda, shoulda done. Hindsight being 2020. I'm no different than anybody. I spend a lot of time doing that. I go, if I could go back, here's what I would do. And I find myself philosophizing about this on the outside chance that my son gets involved in something and turns to me for advice. And that doesn't have to do anything with MMA or the things that I did. It has to do with a motivation and a desire to pursue something. And how is it that I will help, aside from being a chauffeur and making sure that he's there? How will I help to make sure that he is training the right things? I mean, there is really something to be said for that. The best ways to train are still evolving. And over the last decade, they have changed, but they've changed a millimeter. And over the last 2 decades, they've changed, but they changed 2 millimeters. But that's still an evolution, even if ever so slight, and is very relevant. I mean, right, if I was to tell you guys, go outside and flip that rock 100 times. It's a really heavy rock, and it's going to be really hard to do, and your back's going to hurt, and your legs and your arms, and you're going to be exhausted, and you're going to sleep really good tonight. If I told you to go and do that, but you were preparing for a sport of swimming, you would be right to question me and go, what does flipping that rock have to do with pulling my body through water? Relevance being there is ways to train and there is wasted time out there. And as I reflect back on my own career, I still haven't hit it on the head because I always wish that I would have spent more time wrestling. I always maintain that since they set that cage up in 1993 till now, the only thing that has absolutely never changed is that if you can get on top of a guy and start bludgeoning him, they're going to raise your hand. That is really the one commonality that we can look back in 1993 to Royce Gracie and fast forward to today of Khabib Nurmagomedov. If you can throw a guy down and beat him up, you're going to win in a cage fight. So I always defer back to that, but then I will see many great wrestlers who, no matter how much time I spent in the practice room, and don't forget, it's going to be very measured. If I go spend more time wrestling, that means I'm spending 30% of time wrestling, because I'm not going to quit kickboxing and quit sparring, and I'm not going to quit flipping that rock outside just on the off chance because somebody told me that's going to help myself. You're just going to do all of these things. So what do you do with your time? And it is very relevant. Of all of the things that you do, what is the one that is least productive for the sport? And everybody could find those and identify those. And there's some things that you just have to do no matter what. I will maintain that you must jump rope and you must put in road work. But I was trained by Clayton Hires, and he was that's just what he believes. Period. And you can't get around. And I think he's right. I think that you must. I think that it shows a discipline. I think that it shows a desire. I think that it's good for getting your weight down. I think it's good for building your gas tank. I think that legs are very important so that you can move around. I will also concede to you, at no point in that octagon are you going to have on your sneakers or are you going to have a jump rope in your hand. I fully understand those things, but I will still maintain that you just have to do that. You cannot be a combat athlete if you don't. And if I go look at combat athletes, across the board of any discipline, of any style, any way you want to do it, they all jump rope and they all run. So when you look at a Ben Askren that's trying to identify where could have I spent my time wiser, I'm wondering why Ben believes jiu-jitsu. And the only thing that I could identify is maybe it just would have made those nights quicker and easier. I think he's right. I think he probably could have choked more people. If he would have spent more times on jiu-jitsu, he could have choked more people. I agree with that. But if I look at his record, aside from the fight with Damian Maia, which would still be up in the air, is he right? Is that what Ben should have done?